From Little League to the big leagues and everywhere in between. From one stage to another. Passion is my middle name. I'm J.J. Davis. This is In Focus. Now, I've been in the television business in one way or the other since 1978. So I've met a lot of people. And I can honestly say in all my years that this is the nicest guy I've ever met in the industry. Now, you all know him as the sports director at KETV, but I know him as a really nice guy, no ego. And that's rare in this industry, right, Andy?
Yeah.
So joining me right now, In Focus is honored to have KETV sports director Andy Kendeigh. What do you make of that?
Well, let me see. I think I've got, yeah, thank you. You're too kind. It's been a while, JJ. I've known you for 14, 15 years now.
But when you hear people say that about you, and I'm sure I'm not the first guy, how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel good. It always goes back to, what your parents say. Just don't be a jerk.
Right, you can't say
yes, you don't be a jerk. And that's really what you try to live your life by, right?
Now, your parents married 58 years.
Yeah.
What did you get from them? Your mom, Mary, your father, Donald.
Yeah, they taught you that it's not all rainbows and sunshine.
No,
that's for sure.
Not, that's for sure.
I mean, really. I mean, honestly, they did teach you that marriage is a journey and it's hard, right?
That's right.
But they also told me that family's at the forefront, and that's really the key. And I think that's what the big lesson is that no matter what happens, all this other stuff going around in your lives,
right,
it all comes back to family.
What were you just saying to me off camera about your parents? Mother died 2021.
Yeah.
Father died 7 weeks later.
Yeah.
What did you say about that?
I said, people always say, "Oh, it's so sweet. Your dad couldn't live without your mom." And when I was doing the eulogy for my father, I said, that's kind of the common narrative when one parent passes.
It's
right
obvious,
after,
right?
Right. And I said, this couldn't be further from the truth. My mom was probably looking at the gates and said, "Really, Don? You 7 weeks? That's all you could last without me?" So, we joke about it now. And that was another lesson that you mentioned, is that humor was very, very a big focal point in my house.
Right.
We had big family gatherings. Holidays were awesome
right.
at our place, but it really revolved about humor. And I grew up with 4 siblings, 2 older brothers, 2 younger sisters. And if you couldn't take it,
that's right.
You were gonna dish it out, but you could take it.
You were one of 5. I was one of 5.
Yep.
You grew up in Arlington Heights, Illinois. Were you the biggest, we've talked about before, the big freaky kid that was just bigger than everybody else? Or were you the special athlete growing up that was just better than anybody
I
else?
was the big freaky kid that just happened to have a smidge of athletic talent. I haven't grown since 8th grade, JJ. So, I was the guy in grade school when we first started playing football that they had to put stripes on your helmet because if you touched the ball, they would whistle to play dead because they didn't want to hurt the little kid. And this is the God's honest truth. So I was a double striper. So every time, I blocked a punt when I was in 5th grade and I returned it for a touchdown and they said, "No, the ball is dead where you touched it." I'm like, that's not cool. But yeah, I was, I probably weighed more in 7th grade than I do now.
Man.
Yeah, and then I kind of did one of these, and then back my senior year when you might have seen the neck roll picture.
Yeah.
My senior year.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, big neck roll, Brian Bosworth. And I was tipping the scales about 250, 260 back then. But
my God.
Then you go to college. And
yeah. Did you have any sports heroes growing up? Who were yours?
Oh, my God. Walter Payton.
Sweetness,
Walter
baby.
Payton. He is my all-time number 1.
Yeah.
Walter Payton was my guy. He was incredible. I grew up a huge Bears fan. And so it was right when they were starting to get good.
Right.
77, they make the playoffs. 79, they make the playoffs.
Right.
And then obviously in the mid 80s when they made that Super Bowl run, when they finally figured out how to play defense, that was amazing. Yeah. So that was my team.
Of course, the monsters of the Midway always in the old days used to know how to play defense.
Yep.
When did you know? Yeah, I think I might want to cover sports for a living.
Early. So I had heroes. when you asked me about athletic heroes, I also had people in the media that were my hero. Jack Brickhouse,
Right.
Harry Carey, but also local guys in Chicago. Yeah, Harry Carey, right. But local guys in Chicago, guys like Mark Giangreco, who's now out of business, but Tim Weigel, who's passed. Those guys, Weigel especially, to a certain extent, Giangreco, though he was later in my journey, but Weigel was a guy who people don't know about, but if you knew Tim Weigel, he had a segment called the Weigel Wieners, and he would give it out to some goofy sports play, and it kind of taught you that local sports is not just about the scores.
And that was in the early days when we figured out different kind of hooks
absolutely
to grab the audience.
JJ, he did this story with Walter Payton, and Payton was a drummer. I don't even know if you know this, but he was a drummer, and Weigel went to his house and played drums with him. And I thought, this is the coolest thing. Now, I didn't realize that this thing took weeks to set up, and you had to get with his people and do that. I mean, I just thought, God, Tim Weigel's hanging with Walter Payton. This is pretty cool. And I think I knew early on. And back to the Brickhouse thing, that was first my original dream. It was to do Cubs games. Like that was I wanted to do Cubs games on the radio or on television or whatever. I would come home after school and broadcast games, turn the sound down and broadcast games. That's how I was, and then I would play these games, the dice baseball.
Yes, I remember those games.
I was a Yappa guy.
I used to keep score when we played with scores.
I would play whole seasons, and I would call the games as if it was real. And I still have tapes at home somewhere.
Dag.
Yeah.
So you graduate from Wisconsin. You get your first job in Madison.
Yeah.
Then you go to WISN in Milwaukee. You're there 11 years.
Yep. So let me backtrack. So I graduate in college in '91. By the way, Wisconsin won 7 football games.
Oh, here we go.
In my 4 undergraduate years.
Okay.
Barry Alvarez's first year was my senior year in college. So I graduate. There's a gap, 91 to 93. So more than 2 years out of college, I don't have a job. And I'm watching all my buddies, all my fraternity brothers.
I've been there.
And they're all going through the roof, and they're all paying for dinner, and I'm eating Campbell's soup, right? And there's nothing against Campbell's soup. It's fantastic, but I'm eating ramen, whatever.
That's right. That's
mac
right.
and cheese. I can make a mean mac and cheese.
Because we all think that we're better than everybody else, but you know what?
It's all the same.
Yeah, that's right.
And then finally, I'm interning back in the days where you could intern whatever you wanted. So I stayed in contact with the guy who is one of my best friends, my mentor, Jay Wilson, and he allowed me to stay on at the station. And then finally, more than 2 years, 2 months, they had an opening, and I worked part-time. I was making $175 every 2 weeks, and I couldn't care less.
All right, you're there 11 years. You get married, you have 3 kids. Now I want you to give me your best Packer story up and down I-43. Best Packer story covering Green Bay, one of them.
All right, so 7 years on the air in Madison, 11 years in Milwaukee, and we're going back and forth. It's kind of like Lincoln to Omaha. But it's a little further to Green Bay. That's more equivalent to Madison and Milwaukee. But up to Green Bay, it's like a 2-hour drive. I would say there was a game. There was a playoff game against the Seattle Seahawks. And if you remember Matt Hasselbeck, it was a playoff game. He says, we want the ball and we're going to score in overtime. And Al Harris took the pick 6. Well, that game, there was a blinding snowstorm. We had to drive back because we had to fly out the next day. If memory serves, because I had to get a flight for the next round's game.
Oh, my gosh.
And it took us about a drive that normally takes 2 hours, took about 5 hours. So, but that's what you do. That's what you do.
People don't realize. I tell people all the time, we get to cover these bowl games, everything. Everybody thinks everything's glamorous when you go on the road, but you and I know you work your butt off. And then maybe this Saturday night when you have dinner, you can finally eat something. You're exhausted, and then you got to get up the next day.
So furthermore on that story, so I'm driving, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to take a flight. We've worked this out. Let's go cover the Cowboys and Giants. This is back when they were like, sure, let's go. Because we thought that the Cowboys were the number 1 seed in the playoffs that was going to host, and we'd be the first station in town to be in Dallas, plant our flag. The Giants upset the Cowboys that year, so we're in Dallas. We got there in the 4th quarter. And I'm like, oh my God, this is blowing up in our face.
It's perfect, the scenario.
The Giants have beaten the Cowboys. Now what do? Well, we do a couple stand-ups. We get back in the car. Then they say, no, you're going to New York to cover the Giants that week. So that's a good story because of everything that's the way it kind of used to be when.
Yes, because I can relate to that. When I was in Scranton, I covered the Phillies in spring training. Clearwater, Florida. Then they go, why don't you drive to New Orleans in this satellite truck? Remember, it was a big deal back then?
Yeah.
Why don't you go to New Orleans and cover the Final Four? We didn't even have credentials, but I remember I stood on top of a building next to the Superdome. I've got my IFB and I can't even hear, and I just start talking. So I recognize
What year was the Final Four? 01?
87,
okay,
88.
87.
I'm a little bit older.
No, 80. That's good. Was that Keith Smart? Indiana?
Yes, he hit the jump shot to win it from the corner.
There you go.
That's exactly right. So you get the sports director gig here in Omaha from WISN, and at the time you said it was probably the toughest decision of my professional life. Why?
Because of family. Because of family.
But your wife's from here.
Yeah, but my wife's from here, and her mom was here. She was still with us then, and it was terrific, but it turned out to be the greatest move ever. You know, sometimes you just got to take a crack, and in Milwaukee, I was the number 2 guy.
Right.
And the number 1 guy, great friend of mine.
Right.
And he wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
He was a local guy, Dan Needles, great guy. And so I was like, I want to be a sports director. Where can I go? So I stayed within the company, and then that's
all right. Now, I had a former baseball coach tell me it's pretty easy when you're sitting on this side of the desk. How was it so now that you're sitting on the other side of the desk?
Totally different. And Dan tried to tell me, like, hey, when you get into this job, you're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. A lot of days, JJ, as you know, you'll get in and you'll do everything but what you thought you were hired to do, and that is do the 6 and the 10 and what have you.
You have to wear so many hats.
Yeah, you've got to be an administrator and psychiatrist.
That's right.
And you know, so you're doing a lot of different things. And so, so that I think that was the biggest adjustment.
All right. He's also an author. He wrote a book, 2009, and get a load of this title. The Best Wisconsin Sports
Arguments. Yeah, any great sports fan should know. And that actually came about, like, a buddy of mine was looking for a guy to write it, and he knew I was in media in Milwaukee, and I said, well, why don't I get to take a crack at it?
Right.
And it was for a guy who's written a book, you know exactly. It's a long process.
It's a process,
and you think,
man.
oh, it's going to take.
Yes.
I'll have a couple nights after, have a couple pops, and I'll write something. It'll be easy.
Yes.
And, oh my goodness, it was a long journey.
Now we could write a book about your journey here. You've had a medical problem. You had a spinal infection. Tell the people about that and update it for us.
Oh, I'm doing much better. Thank you for asking. It was called osteomyelitis. It's a kind of a bacterial infection that lodged in my spine and my bloodstream. But the great doctors at Methodist really did some great work with me. And it's something that is totally fluky. You don't get it from, like, I asked the docs, tell me what not to do so I don't do this again. And they said, this is just a fluky thing. You just kind of won the lottery. I'm like, this is the worst lottery I've ever won. But yeah.
You missed the Men's College World Series. Everybody was talking about it.
I missed my daughter's graduation from high school.
Oh my gosh.
But I hope she's not watching. But let's just say high school graduation on the iPad, PGA tournament at the same time.
Oh my God!
It wasn't it was terrible to miss it. Don't get me wrong. I'm making light of it. It was a terrible time. I was in the hospital for 5 days, and I even asked. They said, if you had a choice to go to the graduation or the graduation party, we could probably get you out for an hour.
All right.
So that's what we did.
Speaking of fathers, 1994, your father's honored at halftime of the Fighting Illini football game.
Yeah, you did your homework.
King Dad.
King Dad.
He was very proud. He wore the crown very proudly, as you put it. What do you think of that when you think of your father and how you are as your dad, Jim?
Well, it is pretty cool because he went to the University of Illinois, grew up in Champaign.
Red Grange, baby, my hero.
Yeah, his dad was a professor at the university. My mom went there. That's where they met. I didn't get into Illinois. People are like, why didn't you go to Illinois? I didn't get in. I wasn't smart enough. And so when he was honored, it was really cool because my sister at the time, Ann, was on the homecoming court as well. They do it at homecoming. And he won King Dad, and that was a pretty big deal. I mean, that's a cool thing.
Well, I think to a degree you're probably a spitting image of your dad and with a little touch of your mom.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, JJ.
Andy Kendeigh, baby.
Thanks, buddy.
He's the man. He's the man. Well, coming up next, we got a berry to pick with a Beaufield right after the break. Family. When I think of this woman, I think of family. Not just with her immediate family, her family heritage, but the whole world. She puts up a mirror to the world, to everybody she knows. It's family. I also think of this lady as a Renaissance woman. All things arts. She does everything. She continues to grow and grow and grow. And joining me right now is a playwright, novelist, arts education professional, but most importantly, I think you'll agree, a mom.
Yeah.
Beaufield Berry.
Hi.
You're a mom.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I got to get your opinion on this.
I'm ready.
What do you think of sunflowers?
I hate them more than anything on the planet. I hate them.
You are an open book. I mean, I saw that stuff on Facebook and I said, I'm going to get it with the sunflowers. So why do you hate sunflowers?
They terrify me. Why are they 8 feet to 10 feet tall? Why are they looming over me with these giant heads like they're going to eat me? Why do they have these giant leaves that are just like arms? Like you can't, my worst nightmare would be running through a sunflower
And why
field.
do I think a Little Shop of Horrors?
Yeah, exactly. They're weird and people are weirdly.
All right. Now,
Don't want to.
when I have
Upset
researched
the
you,
sunflower
when I've
lovers.
looked you up, yeah, we don't want to upset the sunflowers. The one word comes to mind for me. Everything that you do, printed word, spoken word, truth. You speak truth.
Yes. I mean, I've tried to. I think that informs the way I want to live my life, like inside of integrity and the way that I want to approach my work. Because if I'm approaching my work from a place of truth, then it has the best chance to relate to as many people as possible.
And how do you think you've done?
I think I've done pretty well. When we were doing Six Guns Running, which is my Black Cowgirl musical, right? And I saw, and that musical is based in history, and it's based in these women's real lives and real triumphs and tribulations. I saw a bunch of white men out in the audience crying, and I was like, got 'em. That's how I knew.
All right, let's talk about your history. Grew up in Omaha. You were homeschooled.
Yeah.
Homeschooled. And you said at a very young age, I kind of knew that I had a talent and I wanted to be a writer. But I also stretched the stories a little bit, so to speak. I think the word you used was fibbed. Yes.
Oh, you mean growing up?
Yes,
Yeah.
as a little child. We all do.
Oh, of course we do. Yeah, I was just exercising my creative liberties.
I like that. Creative liberties. That's a great way to put it.
Yes, I also went to, before I was homeschooled, I went to some very strict religious schools for a couple of years. And so I told them, like, I had a sister and she was in the and I don't know, maybe I thought I did.
Well, you've always said that writing comes natural to me. It's like breathing. I cannot not write.
That's right. That's right. It's not like a vocation that I could just like put down and never come back to it. It's part of me.
Well, it was part of you, what, back in 2006, your mom, bless her heart, Pamela Joe.
Yeah.
You're not really sure, life 20s were all that way. We're not trying to figure things out. And she submits some of your work
Yeah.
to the Great Plains Theater Conference.
Yes, she did. And I was living in New Jersey at the time. And in that early 20s, like trying to find yourself
Yes.
thing. And she said, you're a writer and I'm submitting your work and I paid off your tuition. So
That's a
they'll
good
accept
thing.
you.
That's a good thing.
I was like, thanks for that. And it was accepted. And that really was a turning point. Because not just because the work was accepted, but then I went to the conference and I started seeing people who were doing what I wanted to do.
Right.
And could help guide my, oh, here it is again. Right. Yeah.
You've said you're the unofficial ambassador for GPTC.
Well, I was for years, specifically.
Story time with Beaufield. Story time.
Specifically before the kids came in, but I would, Great Plains Theater Commons now is such a huge part of my life. It's been going on, this is the 20th year. And so for those first 12 years, I would be at every single party. Wow. I would be driving around Broadway writers, taking them up to the bakers to get beer.
Wow. Wow.
Showing people around Omaha and making the best friends of my life.
Talking about kids, let it shine.
Yeah.
You claim that your firstborn, Shine, inspired you to write. Mm-hmm. And you also claimed that when I had my child, I wasn't just a participant, quote unquote. I was a career playwright.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having kids, you can go two ways. You either go full in on the mom boat and you can kind of lose yourself in that.
Right.
Or you can like really figure out who you are so that you can help guide them into who they are. And that's the path that I found myself on.
And the path that you took you to a show called The Upper Room.
Yeah.
That had its world premiere in Denver. 100 pages, took you 3 nights.
Yeah.
How did that creative process work?
I was haunted by my ancestors. They showed up from the great beyond and wrote that play with me. And I just had a conversation, I know that sounds silly, but it's just really the truth.
No, I get it, because my father, who died 96, from that generation, the greatest generation, remember they always had change in their pockets?
Yep.
So every now and then I find a dime in
Yeah.
the weirdest places and I go, thanks, Dad. Now you've said, I write about family, but I didn't find family, it found me.
Yeah. After we suffered losses in my family, I really separated myself from them. I was scared to lose anyone else. And so that's when I go on the journey of the soul or whatever. But I circled back because of the work. I circled back because of my mom submitting me, bringing me back to Omaha.
Right. One of your latest works, 2019, Red Summer,
Yeah.
at the Blue Barn Theater, 100 years earlier, the race riots in Omaha.
That's right.
Will Brown murdered by an angry white mob.
Yeah.
What did that mean for you to get that out?
It was huge. It was huge, not only for me as a writer, but I was also pregnant with my daughter, so it was a lot of emotions. But for the city too, it meant something for me. It was a gift to all of us as Omahans to know our history and to be able to delve into it more.
And for me, again, it goes back to that word truth. Now, you've also said, I always thought in the beginning, writers, it's fueled by heartbreak, whiskey, and cigarettes. Yeah. And then I found that, in fact, it does take a village.
It does. It does. At the time, it was my ex-husband and I. He just really held down the kids so I could do that writing, right? I had a really good support system early on so that I could maintain and push my career forward. And there wasn't that many whiskeys, and I kind of went over to Margie.
Just a form of expression.
Yes, and I don't even smoke.
Right, good. So here you are now. You are a Renaissance woman to me. You've written a book, 2017. Tell me about that book.
The book is called Childhood Friends. It also takes place in Omaha. I feel like I'm always coming back home. And it's about a girl. It's really like a hidden autobiography, as most things are.
So let the truth be told. It's about Beaufield.
It's about Beaufield, for sure.
You also co-founded a school. I mean, you have your hand so many things.
Yeah. When COVID hit, my oldest son was going into kindergarten, and it was really like such a weird time. We don't know like what's going to happen. And I'd always had this dream of having some sort of homeschool co-op even before COVID. COVID just made it possible. And so I put out the call on Facebook and I'm like, let's just do this. Who wants to get in the pod? And we ran that school for 2.5 years.
But you had said during COVID, the theater world, quote unquote, flatlined. And you felt somewhat bad about yourself because you felt like the word used, hid your kids away.
No, I don't know. I don't know what I said there.
Because she has said so many things. See, that's just the thing to me. You are such an open book. Where do you come up with your best ideas?
In the shower.
Oh, I thought it was because I had read. Yeah, you said I come up with the best ideas. I do this too. In bed, you think about stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, shower, bed.
Yeah.
They're a few feet away from each other.
Right.
But it goes like this. Because a lot of them come to me when I'm sleeping. Yes.
Story time with Beaufield. Sorry.
They come to me when I'm sleeping, and it's like an aha moment, and then I beeline to the shower. because there's no one in there.
Right.
Turn it on.
Right.
And then they just like, they get heated up.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what I actually do? Because I feel like I'm not an esteemed or really talented writer like you. I feel like I'm better in the spoken word. So what I've actually started, I had this little tape recorder, and I called it The Walk. When I get out of my car at work and I walk into the building, I talk. Once I get in the building, I
Right.
stop. And I just feel like I'm much better with the spoken word. And you never know when the ideas, when the words, when the phrases are going to come.
Yeah. Well, you are amazing at the spoken word. Like right now, you have all this just logged in your memory.
Yeah.
You got the gift of gab.
All right, speaking of the gift of gab, someone once said, I'm in a time of peace, family, building,
Yeah.
mental health,
Yeah.
working hard, and it's a quiet place. You said that.
I said that recently.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that I feel like for years I've kind of given myself in a multitude of ways.
Right.
And I haven't poured back into myself. And it's time for me to do that in order to go to the next level of where I want to be.
You cannot be everyone to everybody.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to say, tattoo, hint, hint, no.
I'm thinking about getting it. I'm thinking about getting the no tattoo.
You've talked about that for years where, yeah, I think I'm going to get a no tattoo because, I got to prioritize.
I got to prioritize.
Have you?
No. I got the yes tattoo and the yellow tattoo.
So when's it going to happen?
I'm going to put it over here somewhere.
What would that mean to you?
It would remind me that no is a full sentence and it's okay to say no.
Right.
And you can still be a generous, loving, caring person with a boundary.
Good.
Yeah.
You've also said that friends have tried, but my boundaries are good now. I'm good. They can't penetrate.
Yeah. I mean, that's an exercise every single day, but and it's not even about the outside people, it's about the within person.
Correct.
Yeah. And so my within person is just becoming stronger.
All right, your within person is outside doing everything. Let me see, 3 volleyball teams. You want to play tennis. I love the volleyball teams. One of the names is Volley Yamas. How are you at that sport?
I play with heart.
Oh, she plays with heart.
I'm getting better every season.
Can you jump up above the net and kill it, as we say?
Absolutely not.
I don't buy it. That's right. I thought you were going to say absolutely.
Absolutely not.
Listen, this has been absolutely a wonderful time. I want to thank you very much for joining me on my show. And you are a wonderful person. I call you a Renaissance woman.
Thank you, JJ. I love that.
Beaufield Berry. That's right. Now, I want to thank you all for joining us today on this show. We had some pretty amazing guests and we had a really good time. So for In Focus, I'm JJ Davis with the Field of Beaufield Berry. Hopefully, I'll see you around town.